of applause for the lovely. We will hear from them again later this evening. I am Nikki Picaro. I am the interim dean of the graduate school, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the University of Miami's 9th annual 3-minute thesis competition. Next year's the 10th, so we're going to have to do something big. Those of you who are unfamiliar with what 3MT is, this is a worldwide competition. It began in 2008 at the University of Queensland. This is where we challenge our graduate students to effectively explain their research to us in 3 minutes. Explain it to those of us who have no clue what they're doing. So tonight, we're all going to learn something new. Let me give you sort of perspective of how difficult this challenge is. The average dissertation is about 80,000 words. If they were to read that to us, it would take over 9 hours. We are asking our 8 competitors tonight to explain that 9 hours in 3 minutes. I do not envy our distinguished panel of judges who has to make this difficult decision of our winner tonight. We do have a lovely panel, so I'd like to introduce them. So first of all, we have Dr. Jennifer Rao, our own Assistant Vice President for Student Affairs on our University Ombudsman. We have alumni, Mr. Javier Morgado, a journalist. We also have with us Mr. Eric Diaz-Patron, the mayor of the city of West Miami. And of course, everybody knows our own Dr. Willie Prado, our interim executive vice president for academic affairs and the provost here at the university. These 4 have the difficult task of choosing tonight's winner. Our first place winner will receive $750, right, Mayor? Just checking. There was a little conversation about how much. The first place winner will receive $750 and the opportunity to compete at the statewide 3MT competition at the Conference of the Florida Graduate Schools on, yes, sadly, April 8th, our birthday, our 100th birthday. But we can get back here in time for the celebrations. The conference is in Boca, so we'll hop on the Brightline and we will be back in time. Our runner-up will receive $350 in prize money, and our People's Choice Award will also receive $350 in prize money. At this time, I can see, there she is. At this time, I'd now like to invite to stage Dr. Suyeon An, our interim associate dean of the graduate school. She's going to lay out the rules of the competition and then tell you all, the audience, how you're going to get involved.
Thank you. Happy Friday. It is a Friday, right? Yes, so I'm so excited to welcome each one of you to today's 3MT competition, where brilliant minds takes on a tickling clock, right? So before we get started, let's take a little trip to Australia. No flights, no passports, just imagination. So back in 2008, the University of Queensland was dealing with a serious drought. Water restrictions were so tight that people had to take ridiculously short showers. And if you are trying to have a deep intellectual thoughts while racing against a shampoo timer, you get how this competition come to be. Someone thought, if we can explain our research before hot water runs out, why not turn this one into challenge? And here we are. I thought about how it feels like if I am in this stage and giving the 3-minute talk. It's gonna be extremely hard, I'm sure. Honestly, it will be extremely chaotic from my end. Picture a group of crazy, overly caffeinated rabbits running around from my brain, and it's gonna be so ridiculously chaotic. But lucky for us, today we have brilliant minds over here. They are laser focused and they are ready to impress all of you. Each one has 3 minutes, think about it, 180 seconds to explain their research clearly and concisely. They get only one static PowerPoint slide, no transitions, animations, or fancy effects. No props, no music, no lab equipment, no costumes, just words and wit. No video, no sound effects, no multimedia, just one microphone. No poems, no raps, no songs, this is just spoken languages. And golden rule, stay under 3 minutes. Go over, and you are out. And for you guys, no heckling. This is not stand-up comedy. No throwing tomatoes. This is different era. No distracting speakers. They are so much trained for this moment. And we are here to cheer them on. What does it mean? During the presentation, you guys are not allowed to get out here or come into here. Only the time our judges are making their judging, you guys can go outside if you want. But remember, that's only 2 minutes. Our judges are scoring based on comprehension, content, engagement, and communication. But you gotta say something here. After all the presentation, we will have 5 minutes to vote the People's Choice Award using QR code on the screen. So pay attention. Someone's research might just blow your mind. Now, let's give a big round of applause to our incredible you folks over here who have worked so hard to be here. Okay, please stand, support them, and let's celebrate some serious brain power here. Let's get started.
The presentation order for tonight of our 8 competitors has been randomly selected, so just sort of you sort of know what's going on here. I'm happy to introduce. Are we mic'd up over there?
Is it
Yeah,
working?
okay.
Is it working?
Yeah, there you go. All right. At this time, I am happy to introduce our first competitor, Gabriel Chagas. He's a PhD student in literary, cultural, and linguistic studies in the College of Arts and Sciences. The dissertation title is Trans-Afro-Americas, Confronting and Debunking Myths of Whiteness in Brazil, Colombia, and the United States. His advisor is Dr. Stephen Butterman.
Wait a second. Yes.
Slavery has shaped several countries across the Americas for centuries. My research makes an intervention in literary studies from a transnational perspective and an intervention in global Black studies from a multilingual perspective. Through literature, I study 3 societies that are deeply racialized: Brazil, Colombia, and the United States. I study the works of 3 Black writers who wrote in the first person using 3 different imperial languages: Brazilian Portuguese, Colombian Spanish, and US English. The purpose of my project is trying to answer the following question. What does it mean to be a Black person in these societies when other identities are at stake? I look at a very specific historical moment in the beginning of the 20th century when segregation, racial violence, and eugenics were at stake in several parts of the planet. And then I'm interested in using literary works to try to understand how multiple identities intersect and change the experience of Blackness. I look at the idea of disability through the works of a Brazilian writer named Guilherme Barreto, who was institutionalized against his will, to think what it means to be Black and be perceived as a disabled person. And I also look at the works of Langston Hughes from the United States to understand what it means to be Black and be perceived as a queer person. In the case of Colombia, I studied the works of Manuel Zapata Oliveira to understand what it means to be black and be a foreigner, or perceived as a foreigner. Therefore, my work tries to understand what it means to be racialized while also dealing with other identities that are still very present in our contemporary society. And then, I try to expand through this framework the interdisciplinary horizons of traditional literary studies that usually are focused on one language and one nation. But I also try to expand the very understanding of blackness in the humanities in general. The outcome of this project is, of course, trying to make it wide, the comprehension of the black diaspora, but also enhance the possibility of translations and crossing boundaries through different languages. And also think about education. My project tries to foster the possibility of global citizens that through literature we understand their role in society and our role in a constant moving planet where, unfortunately, racism is still a important thing. Thank you.
Did they not tell you you guys have to hand them in? You don't get to compare across.
I was trying to count.
You're trying to count. Yeah, no, all right. The team is very strict on how this is going. Okay. Well, I am happy sort of now to introduce our second competitor, Nkosi Muse, PhD student in Environmental Science and Policy in the Rosenstiel School of Marine, Atmospheric, and Earth Sciences. Dissertation is entitled Examining Heat Exposure and Adaptation Across a Diverse Subtropical Region. His advisor is Dr. Catherine Mock.
Okay, you make sure that. But trip over these cords don't work. By a show of hands, who has experienced Miami's heat in the summertime? And I'm not talking about the basketball team. Keep your hands raised if you felt like last summer was hotter than the year before that, and the year before that, and the year before that. Well, my friends, this is not fear-mongering. What we've been experiencing are the intensifying effects of global warming right before our very eyes, or rather on our skin. But I must note, however, that the heat we experience, the deadliest of all weather and climate-related hazards, is not just the result of anthropogenic climate change, but also our urbanization. This is important because imagine walking over asphalt on a hot, cloud-free day where the ground has had nothing but opportunity to absorb all of the sun's radiation. I'm sure you'd much rather walk over grass or an area shaded by a tree, right? What I just described to you in a nutshell is the urban yacht effect. And from West Palm Beach down to Miami-Dade County, we exist in the state of Florida's most urbanized metropolitan region, a trend that will likely continue as long as our population continues to grow. Not to mention that because of our water-surrounded geography, the state of Florida is also the most humid place on average in the entire country. So now that I have you all sweating in this air-conditioned room, you're probably wondering, well, Nkosi, what's the solution? And it's not so simple, but it's that we must be more heat resilient, but not necessarily as people, because all humans have thresholds, right? Even the Miamians that tell you it's always been hot in Miami. But we must be more heat resilient as an urban region. We must build more sustainably and in a way that's equitable for all. But to do that, we must first identify where we need to improve. And that's where my dissertation research fits in. I start off by mapping heat across Miami-Dade County over the past 10 years, as you see in this image here from satellite imagery at 30-meter resolution. At that point, I'm able to see in an area the size of this room how much cooler it is with green infrastructure and trees as opposed to asphalt parking lots and concrete buildings. I then analyzed South Florida's unique muggy summertime air and how it not only prevents our bodies from cooling off throughout the course of the day, but also our cities from physically cooling down at nighttime. Because if you can't cool down at night, when can you cool off? And lastly, Miami-Dade County, the first place in the world to acknowledge heat in the form of a chief heat officer. With our emerging heat policy, are we acknowledging and making sure that heat policy is addressing the needs of all? Are we ensuring that everybody has a seat at the table in the planning process? Are we ensuring that we're recognizing where risks are most increased? Are we also addressing the needs of the most vulnerable? I'll tell you that this work has only produced more work. But the good news is, as we've done this work, we've been able to see where we need to improve. We've been able to identify what the things that we need to improve are, including making sure that our urban heat island, which cools off a lot less than other urban heat islands across the subtropics, making sure that we can cool off effectively at nighttime. We can also make sure that we're protecting the marginalized populations that we have here with our policy. The Black and brown communities, the formerly redline communities, the elderly, the outdoor workers, the children, the athletes, etc. But I'll tell you this, as Vice Chair of the City of Miami's Climate Resilience Committee, and also working alongside some of the best researchers here at the University of Miami, I think we'll be able to cool off just fine. Thank you.
Next up is our third competitor, Mariana Visso, PhD student in biomedical engineering in the College of Engineering. Dissertation is entitled Replicating Pancreatic Cancer Chemoresistance. Advisor is Ashutosh Argawal.
Pancreatic cancer is one of the deadliest forms of cancer in the world. So deadly, in fact, that 90% of patients diagnosed with pancreatic cancer die within the first 5 years after diagnosis. 90%. In other words, there's about 100 of us in this room. If all of us were to be diagnosed with pancreatic cancer today, only 10 of us will be alive in 5 years. The deadliness of this cancer is in part because it develops resistance to chemotherapy, which is the current gold standard for treating most forms of cancer. The reason why it develops this resistance is not yet fully understood, in part because the environment that surrounds this tumor is extremely complex. Our tumor, as it grows, it is surrounded by a wide variety of cells that it can interact with and a wide variety of mechanical stimuli that affect how that tumor grows and spreads in our body. Most current models used to study pancreatic cancer today often concentrate on only one aspect of the tumor. That is, they concentrate either on how one specific cell type affects the progression of that tumor, or how one specific mechanical stimuli affects the progression of that tumor. What I'm trying to do is look at a more holistic approach into the whole tumor. Take into account all those cells and all that mechanical stimuli that we experience in our body, and be able to put them in a small platform, there's about the size of a USB, in which we can clearly observe how those cells are interacting together, and how those mechanical stimulations that we put in affect that tumor development. Doing so, we'll be able to clearly observe in real time how those cells interacting together and how they help promote the tumor growth. More importantly, by understanding how those interactions affect how the tumor grows, we're able to understand which ones we need to cut out, which ones we need to stop, to prevent that tumor from progressing. Doing so, we create better treatments for future patients and increase patient survival, hopefully bringing that 90% death rate of pancreatic cancer to zero. Thank you very much.
Okay, next is our fourth competitor, Soon Ju, PhD student in business in the Miami Herbert Business School. Her dissertation is entitled Complement or Cover-Up. Compliant. Complement
Or cover up.
or Cover-Up. The role of carbon credits in corporate climate strategies. Our advisors are Christina Bouchke and Mark Maffett.
So do companies simply outsource their emissions reduction by purchasing carbon credit without taking any real action? So good evening. Today I want to talk about how public companies use carbon credits to address their climate change program. So as you may already know, companies face mounting pressure to act on climate change. The question is, how do they achieve the emissions reduction? Of course, one way would be reducing their extra amount of emissions by changing their real operations. For example, by redesigning their factory to be more sustainable. But at the same time, companies can also rely on what's so-called carbon credits or carbon offsets. So carbon credits are kind of a certificates that companies can purchase, which represent the emissions reductions. So when companies purchase carbon credits, conceptually it means that companies are paying money for the emissions reduction achieved elsewhere. And by doing so, companies can offset some of their gross emissions and report reduced net emissions after the offsets. So some people say that this can be a practical solution because companies cannot eliminate their entire emissions anyway. But critics are saying that the availability of this type of quick and cheap solution might undermine firms' incentive to take real actions for the climate change. So in my dissertation, I examined whether companies indeed use carbon credits to substitute their internal emissions reduction efforts. So to address this research question, I utilized data in firms' responses to the Carbon Disclosure Project survey. And using this data, I found quite interesting results. So first of all, I found that the proportion of companies purchasing carbon credits almost doubled over the past decade, meaning that more and more companies are purchasing carbon credits. And also, looking at the characteristics of those companies purchasing carbon credits, I find that those companies whose emissions are mostly coming from their suppliers are more likely to purchase carbon credits, perhaps to address those emissions that are less controllable. And finally, and more importantly, I find that the buyers of the carbon credits are the ones who are taking more active action for the climate change compared to their peer companies. Overall, my findings suggest that companies use carbon credits to complement, not replace their internal emissions reduction efforts. And I believe my paper contributes to literature on the company's climate-related action, and also it provides timely evidence on the role of companies' carbon credit usage in their overall climate-related strategy. Thank you.
Tonight's fifth competitor is Taylor Wright, a Master of Music student in the Music Therapy in Frost School of Music. His thesis is Infant-Directed Singing and Same-Sex Fathers, 2 instrumental case studies. His advisor is Dr. Shannon Delatour.
It's probably good to test, but I feel like it's not on. All right, we're gonna hold 1 second. Let's try again. Oh, you guys can hear me much better. Oh, that's good. Same-sex fathers parent an estimated 50,000 children in the United States today. Because of their queer identities, gay fathers experience discrimination, harassment, and other identity-based stigma that can undermine their parental confidence and familial relationships. In particular, a gay father's sensitivity towards their infant is critical, as this supports an infant's self-regulation or ability to modify internal states, a capacity needed later in life to succeed in school, make friends, and follow rules. One way that heterosexual mothers show sensitivity to their infants is by singing, during which they change pitch, tempo, and dynamics to either match or modify an infant state, thereby promoting an infant's self-regulation. As mothers observe an infant's self-regulation, they experience a boost in perceived parenting self-efficacy. What we don't know is, do gay fathers sing to their infants? And if so, are they engaging with this self-regulation feedback loop? I conducted case studies with 2 same-sex father families over the course of 5 weeks. In our sessions, fathers practiced reading infant states and then singing in ways that matched or modified those states. Together, we reviewed video recordings of their singing, and I conducted periodic in-depth interviews. I validated my results following content analysis with the videos, with my written field notes, and through member checks with the fathers. My findings revealed gay fathers sing to their infants at meal times and at bath times, sometimes spontaneously or with pre-recorded music. The fathers accurately read their infant states, paying special attention to the infant's facial expressions, their body movements, and their vocal cues, and they could sing in ways that matched and guided their infant states. One couple would often improvise their singing together. They learned to look for signs of overstimulation and adapted their tempo and their volume in ways that guided their infant regulation, and in turn, their daughter regulated. Seeing this change in their daughter as she focused on their faces, making mutual eye contact and gazing at them, the fathers reported feeling more confident and more connected to their infants. Another father, while he could read accurately his infant state, sometimes struggled in singing in ways that accommodated that infant state. During our last session, the father reported his infant as being active and wiggling and decided that the infant needed lots of stimulation. However, he sang very gently. Through the video review, he identified this disconnect and then shifted, singing loudly and singing fast. He tossed his son up in the air as he did so, and his son shrieked and giggled. And seeing this reaction, the father shared, "It's incredible." Thank you so much.
Tonight's 6th competitor is Anya Sandhi, PhD student in cancer biology in the Miller School of Medicine. Dissertation is entitled Overcoming Obstacles in the CAR T Cell Therapy to Treat Blood Cancers. Our advisor is Dr. Justin Taylor.
Imagine being told you have a type of cancer so aggressive that most people don't survive beyond a year. That's the reality for patients diagnosed with mantle cell lymphoma, a deadly white blood cell cancer. But what if we could reprogram a patient's own immune system to fight back? Now, that's exactly what CAR T cell therapy does, an FDA-approved immunotherapy that transforms a patient's own immune cells, or T cells, into precision cancer fighters. Scientists take the T cells from the blood and genetically modify them by adding a special receptor called a CAR, or chimeric antigen receptor, which acts like a tracking device. This CAR T cell can then seek out and destroy cancer cells with a marker called CD19. You can think of CAR T cells like Marlin, the dad in the clownfish from Finding Nemo. Marlin is on a mission to find and bring home his lost son Nemo. Just like CAR T cells are programmed to track down cancer cells with CD19. But Marlin's journey isn't easy, and neither is CAR T cell therapy. The first big obstacle is antigen escape. Some cancer cells manage to get rid of their CD19, effectively evading the CAR T cell. This is like Bruce the shark, who at first seems like a friend, but then suddenly turns predatory. The second big obstacle is off-target toxicity. This is like Marlin trying to swim through a swarm of jellyfish. One wrong move and he gets stung. Similarly, if CAR T cells are not precise, they can end up harming the patient's healthy cells instead of just the cancer. Here's where my research comes in. I studied two important regulators of the immune system, proteins called Ikaros and Aiolos. In mantle cell lymphoma, Ikaros protein is frequently deleted, while Aiolos protein is frequently overexpressed. My project flips these two conditions. I overexpressed levels of the Ikaros protein while knocking down levels of the Aiolos protein. By fine-tuning these regulators, we can, 1, help CAR T cells stay active for longer, giving them more time to find and eliminate cancer cells, and 2, help CAR T cells be more accurate, allowing them to find the cancer cells and not damage the healthy cells. By making CAR T cells smarter and stronger, we can create a precision cancer fighter that is able to track, attack, and eliminate mantle cell lymphoma. Marlon never gave up on his mission to find Nemo, and neither will we. CAR T cells and I are in this fight to win.
Okay. Our seventh competitor for the evening is Terry Caesar, PhD student in nursing science in the School of Nursing and Health Studies. Dissertation is entitled Obesity in African American Families, a comprehensive analysis using a family health framework. Our advisor is Dr. Arsha Alamian.
Whether we love them or not, our families are connected to our individual health. My research explores family health as represented by the Family Health Scale. Seen on the right side of your slide are the 4 key categories of the Family Health Scale. Number 1 is your family's health practices like nutrition and exercise. Number 2 is your family's access to resources like transportation or healthy produce. Number 3 is your external support or knowing you have someone outside of your family for support. Number 4 is your social emotional support, which it really promotes family togetherness and protects against stressors like financial stress. The Family Health Scale may also be very helpful to understand obesity. Seen in the center of your slide are trends in the 2030 projections of obesity. In addition to obesity being an increasing prevalence in the United States, it's also a national security concern. If you can see the prevalence with darker colors representing a rising prevalence, with there being increasing prevalence, there's a decreased amount of people who are eligible for the military, which is a security risk. Moreover, some of our families are more at risk as a result of obesity. Those who are Native American, African American, and those who are Hispanic American are at more risk. And to top it off, financial risk and the financial costs are about $2.25 trillion annually for obesity. My dissertation research analyzes how valid the Family Health Scale is for underrepresented populations, but also my research explored the relationship between family health and obesity in a population of data in a general population of 953 participants. My findings were that individuals who had a family health assessment that was high had a lower BMI. In addition, as seen in the figure on the right, family health was 2.5 times more likely to be a significant factor in obesity, and that's more than age, gender, education, and income. This demonstrates the potential for family health as an intervention and its potential role in obesity. The future and the transformation of our society's health is more than a matter of weight loss. It requires dismantling harmful systemic factors that can break down the family. This research can embolden efforts to ensure that knowledge is transparent, health is a right, not a privilege, especially for families and individuals are seen and valued for their work. So, put your hand to your heart and remember that We all are family, and our families.
Okay, our last competitor for the night. Please help me welcome Gay E. Wang, PhD student in Communication in the School of Communication. The dissertation is entitled How Loneliness and Misinformation Become Dual Epidemics in the Digital Age. Her advisor is Dr. Nicholas Carcithio. Test.
Loneliness is more than just being alone. It's a psychological state, a feeling of disconnection. As we all know, we can still feel lonely in such a crowded room if we lack meaningful relationships. In today's world, loneliness has become a growing societal issue, affecting mental health, physical well-being, and even mortality. However, what if loneliness doesn't just affect how we feel, but also how we see the world around us? What if it reshapes the way how we process information and even misinformation through the lens of our social identities that we don't even realize? In today's world, people, even those who feel lonely, they strongly identify with groups, whether it's political or sports fan groups or even online subcultures. But how loneliness changed the way they process information across their identities? My dissertation is one of the first studies to empirically test this idea. To test this, we use political groups, one of the strongest and most polarizing society, as a representation of all identity-driven communities. To test this, we don't really look at lonely people as a uniform group. We want to test how loneliness changes people process information across their identities. And what we found is very surprising. Lonely people are more likely to believe in negative, fake information towards their own group. This is puzzling. You may expect that lonely people are more likely to believe in positive news towards their own groups, or they may be more critical towards other groups. So why does this happen totally opposite? Here I have some possible explanations. First, loneliness can increase sensitivity to social threats. So it may make people feel like the worst of who they belong to, and no matter if it's real or not. Also, sometimes lonely people may think themselves are independent thinkers, that they can see the negative, they're drawn to negative misinformation as the hidden truths that others don't really see. Why this matters? It's not only about misinformation, it's how we interpret our social world. It shows that to combat misinformation, probably fact-checking is not enough. Probably we should focus on rebuild meaningful, real social connections so that people don't rely on fragmented, misleading informations. And here I have a question for you all. What else can loneliness impact the way we think? Thank you.
Can we give one more big round of applause for our competitors? I certainly do not envy the judges, nor any of you who actually have to make a decision and a choice tonight. So while we are going to tally the judges' votes, I'm going to invite our jazz performers back on stage, as you can see. And I'm going to ask each of you to go ahead and vote. The QR code is up on the screen. This is for our People's Choice Award. Please vote once, just once. One vote, please. So make sure you vote. The QR code is here on the screen. It'll be up for 5 minutes. Join me in one final applause for our performance. At this time, I would like to once again thank our judges. I'm going to call it, yes? Do not envy the task that they had, because we had 8 fabulous presentations. At this time, I'm going to call your names and ask you guys to come up here. We've got a little something for you. So, Dr. Jennifer Rao, can you join us up here? Javier.
There you go.
How about one more big round of applause for our judges? Okay, it's the moment we've been waiting for, or at least 8 people have patiently been waiting for. All right, so let's remember tonight's winner is going to receive $750 and the opportunity to go represent the U at the statewide 3MT competition up in Boca. As I announce the winners, I'm going to ask you to come to join me on the stage. You saw what happened. You know what's coming. Yeah, this is what we're going to do. All right, so I'm going to start with the People's Choice Award, which goes to Anya Sadi. Oh, just me. also Anya. And our first place winner, tonight's winner, goes to Taylor Wright.
Oh yeah. Congratulations to all of our winners and all of our presenters this evening. I would like to extend a warm thank you to all of you who came out tonight to support graduate research here at the University of Miami. I also need to give a huge thank you to Marisol Gonzalez. While she was stealing the scorecards, without her, this event would not have been possible. She has gone above and beyond. I also need to thank the rest of the graduate school team for helping and assisting Marisol. At this point in time, I would now ask that our competitors, their advisors, and the judges to remain here in the room. Yes, we're doing more photos, in case you didn't know. The rest of you, I invite you to go outside and have some food and drink at the reception. Thank you all. Have a great night.